reacting to his story. So let's just do the latest one.
My heart stopped in the middle of a grocery store. I was reaching for a box of cereal, and my chest seized, and my legs gave out, and I hit the floor, and the last thing I saw was the fluorescent lights
Really good animation.
above me. I woke up in a hospital bed with paddles on my chest, and my mom gripping my hand so hard, her knuckles were white, and a doctor standing over me saying, "We got him back." Third time that year, and I was so scared I grabbed the bed rail with both hands and couldn't let go. My heart needed a valve replacement or it was going to kill me. Insurance denied me 3 times. My mom sold her car, and we still couldn't cover a tenth of what the surgery cost. I was lying in the hospital bed when I saw the casting call taped to the bulletin board across from my bed. Last Chance, a new series where America decides who gets the surgery that could save their life. I ripped the IV out of my arm and crossed the room and tore the flyer off the board because I was desperate enough to beg strangers on television to let me live. My mom signed the consent form with tears running down her cheeks, and I grabbed her hand and squeezed, and I hated myself for making her do it. The studio sent a car. She held on so tight on the porch, I could feel her heartbeat against my chest and mine stuttering against hers. Come home. I got in the car and didn't look back. The studio was massive, cameras on cranes, a live audience behind a glass wall. A man in an expensive suit gripped my shoulder. "I'm Graham. You're going to inspire a lot of people." I passed a heavy metal door on the side of the stage with no sign on it. It looked like it led nowhere. He walked me to a dormitory with hospital beds and the show's logo stitched into the pillowcases. Cameras in every corner. I dropped my bag and a girl across the room threw a pillow at me. "Heads up, cameras are live 24/7. Mia, tumor on her spine." She had a folded piece of paper on her nightstand and a pen. She'd been sick longer than anyone, and she moved like it, but her mouth was faster than anyone I'd ever met. A woman with kidney failure sat on her bed FaceTiming her kids. I could hear them through the speaker. "Mommy, when are you coming home?" She pressed her hand over her mouth and muted herself so they wouldn't hear her cry. A 12-year-old named Corey tugged my sleeve. "Do you think they'll let me FaceTime my dog?" An old man pulled a photo of his grandkids from his wallet and held it up without me asking. His hands shook. 8 of us total, each dying of something different. I tried to call my mom after lights out, and a producer took the phone out of my hand. "No outside contact during filming. It's in your contract." I grabbed for it, and he held it above his head and stepped back. "You signed the agreement. Your phone stays with us until filming wraps. My mom doesn't know if I'm okay. She'll see you on television." He slid my phone into his pocket and walked out. I shoved past him and tried the dormitory door. Locked. I threw my shoulder into it, and the frame rattled and pain shot through my arm. I tried the one at the end of the hall. Locked. The emergency exit. Locked. A red light blinked above it where the push bar should have released it. I spun around, and every camera in every corner had a solid red light, and I kicked the emergency exit one more time so hard pain shot up my leg. Mia found me on the roof. Only door they didn't lock. She sat down next to me and pulled her knees to her chest. "You tried the door? It's locked. They all are. I tried everyone my first night." She pulled the hospital bracelet off her wrist and threw it off the roof, and we watched it spin into the dark. "I'm not going to die in a building with a logo on the pillowcases. What are you—
Whatever this island throws at us, we'll be prepared.
Die in a building with a logo on the pillowcases. What are you scared of? Dying boring. I gripped the edge of the roof so hard the concrete bit into my palms. "We need to get out of here. The only way out is winning. Every other door is locked from the outside." She pulled out her paper. "But if we're going to be stuck in here, I'm going to make sure the world knows what this place really is." "How?" I stole a camera from the equipment room. She opened her jacket and showed me a small handheld camera tucked inside. "I've been filming everything. The locked doors, the confiscated phones, everything." I grabbed her shoulder. "If Graham finds that, then he finds it. I'm dying anyway. What's he going to do? Kill me faster?" Graham walked to center stage in a spotlight. "America, tonight you meet your heroes. Each of our contestants will share their story. You'll vote for who moves forward. The bottom 2 go home." He smiled into the camera. "And by home, I mean home, where they'll receive the best of care." Mia leaned over to me. "That's a lie. The first 2 who got cut from dress rehearsal were escorted to the parking lot and driven to a bus stop." My hands curled into fists. audience. Graham pointed at the first podium. Who wants to go first? Corey walked up, and the podium came to his chin, and he stood on his toes. He talked about his dog, Biscuit. He sleeps on my pillow when I'm gone. He doesn't know where I am. The audience was sobbing. Graham crouched next to him and put his hand on the kid's shoulder. America, look at this brave young man. The camera pushed in so tight I could see Corey's lip trembling on the monitor. Graham looked right into the lens, and his eyes glistened on cue. This is why we do what we do. I gripped the armrest of my chair so hard the plastic cracked. My turn. I slammed my hands on the podium and told them about my mom selling her car. I pulled my shirt collar down and showed them the monitor taped to my chest. The audience clapped. Polite. An old man and a woman with MS were in the bottom too. The old man slid his grandkid's photo back into his wallet and buttoned his jacket. They walked through a side door. No goodbye. The lights shifted and Graham said, "Let's keep the energy up." And I wanted to scream because two people had just walked through that door to die and nobody even said their names. I slammed my fist into the dressing room wall so hard the mirror cracked and a shard fell into the sink. Mia came in and shut the door and locked it. They just sent two people home to die and he said, "Let's keep the energy up." She held up her paper, both names written down. I'm keeping track of every single one. I'm going to shut this whole thing down. Not yet. She grabbed my arm hard. You shut it down, now they cut to commercial and spin it and nobody ever hears about it. You need the finale stage. You need 30 million people watching live. You need to win first. I pressed my bleeding knuckles against the counter. I had to play the game long enough to destroy it from the inside. Graham's voice crackled through the dormitory speakers. Tomorrow's challenge. Physical trials. America wants to see what you're made of. Rest up. He said it like a coach. Like we were athletes and not dying people he'd locked in a building. The obstacle course was ropes and walls and balance beams. Graham's voice filled the studio. Let's see what our heroes are made of. First up, the rope. I grabbed the rope and by halfway up my heart was slamming so hard I could hear it in my skull. My vision went spotty and the studio lights smeared together and I squeezed the rope with both fists and hung there shaking 3 feet off the ground while the crowd screamed my name. A producer below me was circling with a camera angled up at my face. I pulled myself higher one fist at a time and my arms were burning and I could feel my heartbeat stuttering like it was trying to decide whether to keep going. I slapped the bell at the top and dropped to the mat and my knees buckled and I went down hard and I was terrified because my heart was doing something wrong and I was going to die on a stage for a game show. A medic sprinted over and pressed 2 fingers to my neck. His heart rate is 190. He needs to sit down now. A producer shoved between us. Can we get his face? Can we get this? I slammed the camera out of his hands and it cracked on the floor and I was so angry my vision went white. Mia finished last. Her legs gave out on the balance beam and she crashed sideways and caught herself with her hands and her elbows buckled and she hit the mat and the crowd went quiet and she pushed herself up and kept going and finished dead last. I found her backstage doubled over a trash can with her arms shaking. 30 million people watched me eat a balance beam on live television. She straightened up and wiped her mouth. Did you get anything today? I pulled the folded spreadsheet from my waistband. She opened it and her jaw tightened. Entertainment value. Medical need isn't even a column. She folded it and shoved it into her pillowcase. I grabbed Graham in the hallway. She's the sickest person here. That should count. He squeezed my shoulder hard enough that I felt his fingers digging in. The audience votes for who they connect with. You're inspiring people. Don't lose sight of that. He leaned closer and his voice dropped. And don't forget who opened these doors for you. Without this show, you'd be sitting in a hospital waiting to die. I gave you a chance. Hospital waiting to die. I gave you a chance. The least you can do is perform. A woman with kidney failure was eliminated. She stood up and smoothed her shirt and picked up her purse and turned to the camera. My kids are 4 and 6. She walked through the side door. Nobody clapped. Graham said, "What a journey. We'll be right back." I kicked the dressing room door open so hard it bounced off the wall and the handle punched a hole in the plaster. Mia found me pacing with my fists clenched. She grabbed my hand and wrapped my bleeding knuckles in a towel. That woman has 2 kids. I know. 4 and 6. She said it to the camera and they cut to commercial. I know. My voice broke. Write her name down. Mia pulled out the paper and added it. The list was getting longer. I stole a phone from a producer's jacket while he was in the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I dialed my mom's number from a supply closet with the door cracked open, listening for footsteps. She picked up before the first ring finished. "Come home. Please just come home." I pressed the phone against my forehead. "I can't yet, but I'm going to end this. I promise." What does that mean? It means I'm not just going to win. I'm going to make sure nobody else ever has to do this. I started collecting evidence. I snuck into the production office after hours and pocketed a printed spreadsheet that ranked every contestant by entertainment value. I found an email chain between Graham and the network. Post-elimination care, NA, not our liability. Contestants sign release at intake. I photographed the locked doors, the confiscated phones, the contract clause that said leaving early forfeited all medical coverage. Graham caught me in the hallway outside his office. He blocked the door with his arm. "What are you doing back here?" "Looking for the bathroom." He held my eyes for 3 seconds. Then he smiled. "Bathrooms are the other direction." He squeezed my shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Stay in your area." He held the grip for 3 seconds, and his smile never wavered, but his eyes were flat and empty. "I'd hate for anything to affect your standing in the competition." I pulled free and walked back to the dormitory, and my legs were shaking. Mia hid everything under her mattress. Corey got sicker between tapings, fevers and nosebleeds, and he'd shuffle back to the dormitory and climb into bed and ask me about Biscuit. I made up tricks. I told him Biscuit could catch a frisbee in the air, and he'd smile with his eyes half closed and say, "He can't really do that." And I'd say, "How do you know you're not there?" And he'd giggle, and the giggle would turn into a cough, and I'd pull the blanket tighter around him. Graham turned it into a storyline. "Will Corey make it to the next vote?" Corey asked me after the taping why Graham kept talking about him on camera. "He says I'm brave, but I'm not doing anything." I pulled the blanket up to his chin. "You're doing plenty." I passed a mirror in the hallway, and the show's logo was stitched on my shirt. Same logo as the pillowcases. Same logo as everything in this building. I ripped the shirt off and threw it on the floor and put on my own shirt from my bag. I woke up at night with it hammering so hard the bed frame vibrated, and Mia sat on the edge of my bed and held my hand until it passed, and neither of us said a word. A producer told me the crack in my voice during the car story was television gold, and I gripped the edge of the sink and squeezed until my arms shook. I was disgusted with myself, and I was running out of time to end this. Graham appeared on the dormitory screens. He was sitting in a leather chair with his legs crossed. "Tomorrow's finale qualifier. Each of you gets 30 seconds to stand in front of America and make your case. Why should you be the one who gets to live?" He leaned forward. "A vote counter will run on the screen in real time so you can see exactly how America feels about you. Word by word, pause by pause." He smiled. "Make it count. 2 of you won't be here next week." The screen went dark. Corey pulled his blanket over his head. I dropped onto the edge of his bed and told him Biscuit could do a backflip, and he said, "Now I know you're lying." And I said, "You're right. He can do a double backflip." And he laughed, and for 3 seconds the room didn't feel like a cage. Mia went before me. She gripped the podium and told the truth. "I'm not going to make you cry. I'm dying, and I need help, and that should be enough." Her counter barely moved. She was eliminated. She pulled me into a hug in the hallway, and every bone in her spine pressed against my arms. "Win this thing." Her voice cracked. She shoved the crumpled paper into my fist, every eliminated name, hers at the bottom. She walked toward the side door and stopped with her hand on the frame. She turned around and looked at me. "The camera is in the equipment closet behind the spare batteries. Everything I filmed is on the memory card." She tapped the door frame twice and walked through. The door clicked shut. Final 3. Corey, an older woman with lung disease. Me. Graham pulled me into his office. "You're our front runner. Lean into the mom angle. Can you cry on cue?" I shoved back from his desk, and my whole body was shaking with rage. These are real people. That's what makes it great television. I grabbed the door frame on the way out. Under Mia's mattress, I had everything I needed. Finale night. The studio was packed. Cameras on every angle. My heart was skipping beats before I reached the stage, and I pressed my hand against my chest and kept walking. Graham walked to center stage. "Tonight, one of these extraordinary people will receive the surgery that will save their life. America, this is your decision." He called a 5-minute break for lighting adjustments. I told a producer I needed the bathroom. He waved me toward the hallway. I walked past the bathroom and kept going. The tech booth was behind a door marked "Authorized Personnel," locked. Mia had told me about a gap between the booth wall and the backdrop rigging. I dropped to my knees and crawled behind the stage scaffolding, and I was so terrified my arms were shaking before I even reached the gap. Cables everywhere. The gap was barely wide enough for my shoulders, and I had to turn sideways and squeeze through with my back scraping metal poles and my chest pressed against the wall. I could hear producers on the other side of the backdrop. "Where'd he go?" "Bathroom. Get him back in 2 minutes." 2 minutes. My heart was slamming so hard I could feel it in my throat. The broadcast computer was mounted on a shelf inside the booth. I could see it through a ventilation grate. I reached my arm through and my fingers brushed the USB port. Too far. I pressed my shoulder harder against the grate and the metal bit into my skin, and I stretched until my arm was shaking and my fingertips found the port, and I shoved the flash drive in, and it clicked, and a wave of fierce triumph surged through me. I yanked my arm back, and a screw on the grate caught my sleeve and ripped the fabric, and the grate rattled, and pure panic flooded my body, and I froze. What was that? Footsteps right on the other side of the wall. A flashlight beam swept under the backdrop 3 inches from my shoes. I pulled my feet in and pressed myself flat against the scaffolding. The beam moved on. Nothing. Probably the AC. I squeezed back through the gap and scrambled to my feet and sprinted to the bathroom and splashed water on my face, and my hands were shaking so hard water went everywhere. I half ran back to the stage and threw myself into my chair 6 seconds before Graham called my name. The drive was in. Channel 4. My hands were still shaking from adrenaline, and I could taste metal in my mouth.
Oh, damn.
Holiday planning is full of what ifs.
Were still shaking from adrenaline, and I could taste metal in my mouth. Corey went first. A producer had dressed him in a clean white shirt and combed his hair, and he stood at the podium on his toes. He sleeps on my pillow when I'm gone. My mom sent me a video. He just sits there and waits. The audience was destroyed. Graham crouched next to him with his hand on his back. America, this is what we're fighting for. The older woman went next. Quiet, dignified. The counter was flat. My turn. The spotlight hit me, and my heart was hammering, and I could feel it skipping beats, and sweat ran down my temples. The prompter scrolled. Mention your mother. Pause after the insurance line. Camera 3. I gripped the podium, and I was terrified and furious and ready to burn this whole place down. I looked at the prompter. I looked at Graham with his earpiece. I looked at Corey in a chair too big for him. I looked at the side door. I reached under the podium where a monitor switch was mounted to the frame. I flipped it to channel 4. The screens behind the stage flickered, and the satisfaction was so savage I could feel it in my teeth. Graham's smile froze. The producer's document filled every screen in the studio. Contestant rankings by entertainment value. Every name, every number, the audience murmured. Graham's hand went to his earpiece. The screens changed. The email. Post-elimination care. NA. Not our liability. 30 feet wide. The murmur became gasps. I pulled out Mia's paper and unfolded it on the podium. These are the names of every person eliminated from this show. They were ranked by entertainment value. When they were voted off, they were driven to a bus stop. No follow-up care. No medical support. Nothing. I pointed at the screen. Not our liability. That's what this show thinks of the people who walk through that door. Graham sprinted for the tech booth. He ripped his earpiece out and screamed at a producer. Kill the feed! Kill it! 2 producers grabbed for cables behind the stage. The screen switched to Mia's footage. The locked dormitory doors. The confiscated phones. A producer telling a crying contestant, "You signed the contract. You can't leave." The audience was on their feet, not clapping, shouting. A woman in the front row pressed her hands against the glass and screamed. A man stood up and pointed at Graham. "You locked them in?" Graham spun toward the cameras with his hands up. "This is being taken out of context." I grabbed the mic. A woman stood at this podium and said, "My kids are 4 and 6, and you cut to commercial." An old man walked through that door with his grandkid's photo in his wallet, and nobody said his name. "You turned a 12-year-old who just wants to see his dog into a plot line." I pointed at Graham. "You told me I was going to inspire people. This is what you meant. You meant I was going to stand up here and bleed for ratings." The audience behind the glass was pounding on it with their fists, and I was so overwhelmed I could barely stay on my feet. A man in the second row picked up his chair and threw it at the glass, and it cracked. Security rushed the stage, but 2 audience members had already shoved through the side entrance, and one of them grabbed Graham by the lapel. "You locked them in. You locked children in." Corey slid out of his chair and walked across the stage on shaky legs and grabbed my hand. His fingers barely wrapped around mine. The older woman stood up and took my other hand. 3 dying people holding hands under the lights, defiant and unbreakable, while the audience pounded the glass and Graham's earpiece buzzed and the evidence played on every screen behind us. They cut the broadcast. It didn't matter. Mia had uploaded everything to every platform she could reach from a phone she'd smuggled out in her bag the day she was eliminated. By the time the screens went dark, the footage had 2 million views. By the time Graham's lawyers sent the first takedown notice, it had 20 million. A surgeon in Boston called the network and offered to do every remaining contestant's procedure for free. 2 more followed. A hospital system in Chicago offered aftercare. My mom called me. She was sobbing. I pressed the phone against my ear and slid down the wall. "Mom, a surgeon called. Massachusetts General. He'll do it for free." The relief and the joy hit me at the same time, and I doubled toppled over and pressed my forehead against my knees and sobbed. "Come home," she said. Same words from the porch. I held the phone with both hands and my shoulders shook. Surgeon in Denver, pro bono. I loved her so much I dropped to the floor and pressed my face into the carpet. "Mia, don't you dare cry." I was already crying. Corey got his transplant. His mom sent me a video of Biscuit jumping on
Man, this is so sad.
him so hard he fell into the grass, and I gripped my phone with both hands, and my vision blurred because that kid deserved every second of it. The older woman sent me a card. "I stood up because you did." The kidney failure woman's kids FaceTimed me from her hospital room. She grabbed the screen and said, 4 and 6 and they still have a mom. I put the phone down and pressed both hands over my face and cried because that sentence was the whole reason I'd done any of it. I pulled out the crumpled list and smoothed it flat and ran my finger down every name. The show was canceled. Graham was under investigation. The hospital that took me had no cameras and no logos on the pillowcases, and I pressed my face into the pillow and cried because that's all it should have ever been. Mia rode shotgun to my follow-up because she refused to let me go alone. I saw Graham on a billboard, and she leaned across me and gave it the finger, and we both laughed so hard the car swerved, and for the second time since I met her, I forgot where I was and why I was there, and it felt like freedom.
Oh, guys. That's the end of his story. I genuinely think it's like super good.
I hope you guys enjoyed.